Whether you invested in an opportunity zone or syndication, in the long run, isn't necessarily going to break the bank. Are you actually invested in, understand your goals for your portfolio and you're investing for cash flow, equity growth, diversification? That's going to get you further along, right? So what is the objective? What are the strategies? And then what are the tactics that you individually need in order to win your wealth game?
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Welcome, Decoding Cash Flow listeners. Today we have a great guest, Whitney Elkins-Hutten. She's a director of Investors Education at PassiveInvesting.com, a co-author of a book, Resilient Woman in Life and Business. She also hosts a podcast, Passive Investing Made Simple, and Multifamily Investor Nation. 2 podcasts, that's good. And she's also a partner in more than $800 million worth of real estate investment, which includes multifamily apartments, car washes, self-storage units across 11 different states. On top of that, she has also flipped over $5 million in residential real estate. Whitney, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Ted.
All right. So before we dive deep into any specific segment, can you please give our listeners a little bit background about yourself and how did you get started into real estate?
Yeah, so I, right now where I'm at, I'm the director of investor education at PassiveInvesting.com. There I help investors just understand their goals and understand the risk of passive investing and help them understand each of the asset classes that we offer so they can, pick the portfolio that best suits their needs. One would think that I went to college for this or got a degree in this. That is not the case. I actually stumbled into real estate back in 2002 completely by accident. I bought a house with a significant other, and about a month later, the relationship fell apart, and I had a house that needed dire rehab. YouTube didn't exist back then, so I bought a book and I completed the rehab myself, paying my friends in sushi and beer and pizza. 11 months later, sold the house and made more money in that one transaction. And that's what actually after I sold the house, I realized I had eliminated my housing costs for 11 months. And I'm like, ooh, there's something to this real estate thing. I made more money than I had working my day job that had me traveling 80 hours a week. So I continued to do projects, live-in flipping and house hacking projects on the side. And it wasn't until probably like about 10 years later that my husband and I were like, how do people retire off of this? And then that's when the term cash flow entered our vocabulary. And we're like, oh, we keep the property. Genius. We put a renter in it. Okay. So then, if anybody knows me, I'm the type of ready, fire, aim type person. So I dove headfirst into rental real estate. We scaled 36 single family units that way, then started transitioning into small multifamily units when we realized we could get more units with each transaction. And then eventually scaled up into the multifamily, both actively and passively, because I had just think about this. I was also working full time on the side. I had our baby girl at home, and I was taking care of 3 elderly members in our family. So burning the candle at both ends and 5 times in the middle. And then that's really where it dawned on me that if I wanted true freedom, I needed to figure out how to take that active income I was earning from my job, from all these passive investments, all of these active real estate investments we have, and transition that into a passive portfolio. I recently, heard somebody bust the myth on passive income, and I would totally agree with them. There's no such thing as passive income. You have to put in a lot of upfront work to earn that income to begin with in order to transition it into passive income. And that's really what I help people, understand, is that they can do this for themselves too. Yeah.
And you absolutely said right? you need a passive income. In addition to active income, you know, it's always better to have a passive income so that just in case if, you know, something happens to your job, 9 to 5, or you something happens to you, or where you cannot work for a period of time, then the passive income is the thing which you can rely on during that period as well as in retirement, right?
Well, that's happened to me. I mean, in the middle of this journey, we probably had about 12 houses already under rentals. I had 3 rehabs going, and we were still flipping about 10 properties a year in order to replenish our reserves. And then my husband broke his neck mountain biking. So I'm like, ooh, I'm very actively involved. I need to start handing off a lot of these things for the next few weeks because I got to take care of my husband. So, and then, so I get my property manager situated, my construction manager situated, and said, I'm going to be out for about a month, until I can, life settles down a little bit. And then about 2 weeks later, we found out that my mom had passed away. And I was like, you remember, guys, when I said it was going to be out for a month? It's now 6. So, peace, see you later. But I mean, I had to, quickly implement a ton of systems in order to, make sure that, all those businesses stayed afloat. Here's the kicker though, and directly speaking to what you just said, is that I didn't, we had these active projects going, but I couldn't push pause on every single one of them because we had enough passive income coming in to support our needs, our essential needs, and even quite frankly, our lifestyle. We were already like, pretty financially free at that point in time. And I mean, we still needed to build. We would have to restart all those projects, but I could have pushed pause. And that was an amazing, in that dark time of my life, it was an amazing feeling to know that I didn't have to, you figured that piece of the puzzle out too, if I didn't want to.
And as you said, you started your real estate, I would say renting and flipping the houses. How did you get into this investing in multifamilies, car washes, self-storage? What's your journey? What led you there?
Well, I'm a big advocate. Have you ever read the book The One Thing by Jerry?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Gary Keller, right? Yeah.
Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Yeah. I tried to mix the two names together. That didn't work, right? But in the book, there's an image of a domino, right? Yeah. Each domino can knock down the next one that's 1.5 times its size. And so if you just start lining up dominoes, I mean, by that type of compounding math, you can knock down, I think what was it, like in, 30 dominoes, a domino the size of the Eiffel Tower, and then like in 60 dominoes, you're like already to the moon. Right?
Yeah.
That compounding effect. So, we had scaled all these, single family, properties. And then at one point in time, I'm reading this book and I'm like, why can't I do a multifamily? I can manage 36 of these. Certainly I can manage a 52-unit building, right? And there's going to be things that you need to learn, new realtor, new lending, all that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to knock down the next domino, just a little bit bigger. Fantastic, 52-unit building. I'm like, wow, well, if I can do that, what else can I do? And so I just kept like nudging it right along. And so with each subsequent transaction, I was looking for not so much a way to best myself, but I knew where I needed to get to, the size of portfolio that I needed in order to achieve the wealth that I wanted in my life. And so I was like, okay, if this is where I want to be in 5 years, what do I have to do today to be on track for that 5-year goal? If I want to have $800 million in real estate in partnership or more, we actually have more than that now. I got to, have 1 million in the first year. How do I get to 1 million? Right. So it was really taking that incremental, those incremental steps. But how did we were kind of forced to make that transition from single family into multifamily by sheer necessity of, we just had so much time. And I just couldn't fathom managing 800 or 120 single family units. Even though we utilized a property manager, I was, doing all the lending and paying all the insurance bills, handling all the insurance claims. It was like, okay, if I'm going to scale, do I scale for more single family properties where I'm 100% occupied, or not even 100%, I'm paying the bills on it? Or how can I risk mitigate this? Oh, I can get a 52 unit building or whatever size of building. Even if a 4-unit building would have been an amazing next step. So that's kind of the mentality that I approach that with.
And the thing is, I also started, fix and flip back in 2012. And since then, I have done many fix and flips, hold on to some of the investment properties, like multifamily properties, I hold on to it if the cash flow makes sense. And the others, I just sell it off. Recent, like after spending a few years in fix and flip, we started ground up constructions. For luxurious single family homes, as well as small multifamily properties, around 20-25 units properties. And what I've noticed is, when every time I have to refinance my smaller property, maybe it's a 2-unit, 4-unit, it's a lot of hassle. All the paperwork starts again. And you keep doing it for all the properties. It's just too much time, energy, money spent, just for refinancing. That's one aspect, right? Managing is a different thing. Scaling is a different thing. But that also one of these factors also changed my mind. I started pivoting to larger multifamily properties. Didn't want to take a hassle of managing small units across different counties or different cities.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, if somebody is listening here and they're like, I have 15 units and I'm totally happy with it, or 50 units, single family units, and I'm totally, that's fine. But at some point in time, if you have larger goals, you want to be more efficient and effective with your time and your resources. And that is one way to achieve that efficiency and effectiveness. Whereas I know, there are some well-known, single family fix and flippers like Chad Carson. I mean, he has 120 single family properties. And I think his wife manages pretty much darn near every single one of them. But they have systems in place. You have to get leveraged somewhere. And quite frankly, I really believe that and I do an extensive amount of coaching at Ash Wealth, my own private coaching group. And majority of the people that I coach that get into real estate, if you're not going to scale to like 15 to 20 properties, I really encourage you to look at something different, right? Because you're not going to achieve any sort of financial freedom unless you're going to, commit to a bigger number. And there's a multitude of ways to get involved in real estate passively, through a syndication, REITs, funds. There's a lot of different options out there. But I would say most of the people that are actually in active real estate will burn out at some point in time if they don't figure out how to get leverage with either their people, their resources, or their time.
Well, that's absolutely true. Yeah. And Whitney, about you mentioned you have your own coaching program, right? Is it in addition to what you do at passiveinvesting.com? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll talk about that also later on, but let's switch gears and talk about your investors relationship at passiveinvesting.com. So just to start with, what are the basic criteria normally investors should pay attention to when they vet a syndicator or an operator?
Yeah. So, to back it up a little bit, let's not even jump into vetting the operator. Let's understand the first thing that an investor should do is really truly understand their goals, their risk, and their timeline for investing. Why is that so important? Because that is going to dictate what type of asset class you go into, what type of operator you invest with, what market you're invested in. So, and it doesn't have to be hugely complex. And I also think this is kind of like a spiral journey, right? For somebody getting newly into the space, they may not dial it in immediately off on their first investment. But as they get into their, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th passive investment, they've probably got a really good investment thesis, but you can get probably 85% of the way there just with a few questions. One, do you believe in real estate, right? If you don't believe in real estate, don't invest in real estate because you'll be nervous, right?
That's
Especially
true.
when you enter into a syndication with an operator, you're entering into a business relationship that's going to be 3, 5, 7 years. Okay. So do you believe in real estate? 2, understand what do you need from your portfolio. And don't just think in terms of today, but think in terms of like 5 to 10 years or in those what if situations. Do you need cash flow? Do you need equity growth? Do you need tax benefits? Do you need diversification? And that's going to be different for every investor that's listening to this podcast right now. The number one mistake I see investors make is that they assume somebody else's investment thesis, and then they make their first investment and they're like, ew, I thought I was going to get cash flow. And I don't get anything for 3 years. Like, what happened here? Right. So, really understand what your goals are. And then 3, like, understand your investment horizon. Okay. So, and this kind of dovetails into risk a little bit, but do you need to deploy your capital and get it back in 3 years? Or are you okay deploying your capital and getting it back in 7 to 10 years? Just know, even though an operator might put out an offering memorandum that says our business plan is 5 years, hiccups can happen, and that can turn into 7 years, or they might hit a nice catch a nice tailwind and they sell it in 3 and you get your capital back there. So just know that that's kind of the nature of the game a little bit when you invest in somebody else's business, that the plans can change, but you want to understand what your goals, your risk, and timeline are. That way, when you talk to the operator, you can figure out if you're aligned from a business standpoint. Okay, now we're talking to the operator. Okay, number 1, make sure you get on the phone with every single operator. All right. I know people have their checklists and their spreadsheets, and they try to gather all the data they can from investment groups, and they try to like hoodwink that as much as possible, create shortcuts for themselves, but nothing will replace a conversation to really fully understand if you know, love, and trust somebody. 2, when you're on that call, you want to suss out a ton of questions. And I would have a standard core group of questions that you're asking every single operator so you can compare apples to apples. Even across asset classes, right? You're asking the same questions. But what's their, some pretty standard things, or like, what are their, their track record, their experience, who's on their team? Is there more than one managing partner? If there is, are they unrelated? Okay, that's a huge way to mitigate risk in your portfolios, to make sure you are investing with groups that have more than one managing partner, and that the managing partners are unrelated to each other. Not that they're both going to like run off to like, with the money or anything like that. It's because, if something happens, like in one of their families, the other partner isn't going to be as probably affected by whatever that event is.
Yeah.
Death, divorce, dislocation, something like that. Do they have a background in business? Do they have a background in real estate? Let's see, other questions. You want to really dive into their underwriting model. Like, what is their philosophy of putting refinances or underwriting refinances into their business plan? What is their philosophy on how they utilize debt? You want to kind of get that, gather that knowledge up front. Also, make sure when you get off that call that you are Googling every senior management person on that team and putting lawsuit or legal after there, just to see what pops up. Okay. Public record, a lot of that stuff is public records. Traffic tickets, Divorces, that really isn't that concerning to me. Embezzlement charges, fraud, like those are red flags,
Yeah.
right? So, and those are just kind of some quick things that you can do to understand, like, if are you getting into business with the right person? But most importantly, check your gut. Our gut is our first brain. I have a natural health and medical background. Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't think we really trust our gut enough. Like, if you get off the phone and you're just like, I don't know about that. Okay, take note of that. That's
That's
a
the
red
first sign. Yeah.
first sign. Pay attention to it, right?
Yeah. Right. So we talked about how to vet the investors, sorry, operators, and what are the few criterias that investors needs to keep in mind, like as you said, the risk tolerance, the length of investments. In addition to that, maybe uh, uh, are they investing for just a tax saving purpose, or are they really interested into monthly or quarterly cash flows? um, but for that to for investors to get that insight, right, you need to educate them first, right? So what are the plans or the strategies that you have implemented to educate the investors even before asking them to invest with you?
Yeah, so there's several different channels that I put out education on. One, you can read our blog at passiveinvesting.com. And I really try to tap different modalities for people because we all learn differently. Some of us read, some of us listen. We also have our Passive Investing Made Simple show. It's a podcast style show. It's designed to be like 20-minute, like pretty quick things that you
Mhm.
can videos either you can watch or listen to on your commute. Then I have our longer boot camps. These are more skill development, right? We take, a particular skill that a passive investor needs, and we deep dive into what is that skill? Why is it important? How do you do it? And let's take it to the next step. Let's build a tool in real time that you can now put into your personal vetting process to make you a better investor. All right. And, granted, we do all this, or I do all this, with the hopes that somebody like, interacts with us more, gets to know us better. But those are, education and skills that you can use whether you invested with us or with another operator. And so those are things that we do. We also do live education at conferences, for people who are, wanting to like look us in the eye and shake our hands. I love it when investors do that.
You had one recently, right? Before about 3-4 months.
We had our Multifamily Investor Nation conference back
Yeah.
in June.
June, yeah.
Yep.
June.
So, but I'm constantly attending conferences. I was recently at the One Thing. I presented the One Thing Couples Goal Setting Retreat Mastermind this year with Jay Papasan and Wendy Papasan. And I there were so many people that one had been following us, and they came up and they like shook my hand, they looked me in the eye, and they were like, "I've been waiting to like see you." And I'm like, "That's fantastic. I think that's great. If that's what you need to invest, put yourself in the room with the operator, right?"
Yeah.
Because we all need different things. There are going to be people listening here that are totally fine, doing a little bit of web research and some Zoom calls and maybe like a phone call, and they can get to yes. And then other people are going to need to like look somebody in the eye and like have a conversation with them before they're viscerally, their body will allow them to say yes to that deal.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Let's switch the gears now from investors education to uh, your uh, your education, your personal education classes or seminars that you have. Uh, yeah. Uh, what do you focus on? Is it just for real estate, or do you focus on the holistic approach towards financial freedom or passive investing?
Yeah. So at Ash Wealth, I meet investors where they're at and really help them understand their goals and give them what they want, but also what they need. And so a lot of the times I'm talking to investors that either want to get involved actively or passively, but they're latched on to like, I need passive income now, right? I need out of this job. There's a pain that exists here. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. Let's figure out how to start working towards solving that puzzle piece. And but also let's clean up some of the things that are going to make you a better investor. And how I phrase this to people is, let's learn how to win the wealth game together. And that means we have to understand not only the objective of winning the wealth game, right? Like if you're playing Monopoly, you need to understand the objective, right? You need to understand the strategies, and then you need to understand the rules. And so many of us, and how to play by those rules. So many of us get so starry-eyed by the tactics, those rules on how to win, that we forget that there's an overarching objective and strategy that if we just paid attention to, that would get us to about 85 to 90% of our results right there. Okay, whether you invested in an opportunity zone or syndication, in the long run isn't necessarily going to break the bank. Are you actually invested in, understand your goals for your portfolio, and you're investing for cash flow, equity growth, diversification? That's going to get you further along, right? So what is the objective? What are the strategies? And then what are the tactics that you individually need in order to win your wealth game? Okay. And so that's what I help people do at Ash Wealth is, understand the wealth game, understand those strategies, those overarching strategies. How do we create wealth? How do we keep it? So many people neglect those first two pillars and they dive right into the third pillar, which is how do we invest to grow our wealth? And then they neglect the fourth one. They maybe even, have a nice portfolio already scaled, and they forget that I need to figure out how to pass this on effectively and efficiently. And guys, having a will and trust is fine, but that's only a minor step on being able to pass on your wealth efficiently and effectively. So I really help people, master all four of those pillars, the investing piece being probably the one that people come to me the most for, but that's what they want. And I teach them what they need, which is how do we create the wealth? How do we keep it? And then how do we also pass it on?
All right. So when you talk to the investor to convince from investing in one asset class to other, have you found like a little resistance from the investors, or how does that work?
Well, it's about tapping into, we're back to now to helping people understand passive investing and the different asset classes, right? And really, if somebody has a history in one asset class already, say like multifamily, what I do is I try to identify those skills they already have and connect the dots, make them translatable. That way they can transfer the skill. Again, this gets back to, instructional design and education, right? So, okay, so multifamily, let's take, for example, they understand net operating income. That's how the value of the asset is driven off of in multifamily. Net operating income divided by the cap rate. Fantastic. That's how I get the value. Okay, we don't have net operating income when you talk about express car washes, but what's the translatable term? Expected gross income. Okay, so then I just help them understand. We have changes in terminology, right? It's like a, if you ever, you first foray into the financial world, like it's just a whole different vocabulary, and that is the obstacle for most people. But if we can, once we get that, equate the vocabulary, it makes that transition a little, a lot easier. So net operating income, fantastic. Well, or excuse me, expected gross income for express car washes. But then I have to be like, okay, so now that you understand that we got to drive the income up in both instances, we have to drive operational expenditures down in both instances, and then add in additional income as much as possible in both instances. Okay, we got the equating numbers here, but let's talk about like the car washes are now valued off of a multiple of their EBITDA, their profit. Okay, so that is really the big difference. So I can actually draw out these through lines for the investor between everything there. And they're like, oh, I get it. I get it. I get it. Get it. And so I'm really just teaching one new thing to them, which is how is the value created? Okay. Like it's not divided by the cap rate. It's now a multiple of.
Yeah.
And so it's strip. You got to figure out how to strip all the complexity out of there. And I see, that's what, for me, what I consider one of my superpowers. But I think a lot of syndicators try to take for granted that investor can make that leap. No, they're too busy in their day job, chasing after their kids, figuring out how to get their own company off the ground and profitable. Yeah. So you have to make it as easy and smooth for them as possible.
That's great. All right, Whitney, we'll just move on to the final round of questions. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking for hours on this topic, Ready for the questions? Yeah. All right. So which is the one book that you recommend, which has the most impact in your life or on the business?
Well, I got a couple. Okay. For one, I just wrote my own book with bigger pockets, Money for Tomorrow. And so this is for me, I'm kind of partial to this because there was not a book out there that I considered a one-stop shop to give to my daughter on, for her, pass on knowledge, like how do you build multi-generational wealth? How do you win the wealth game, right? There's a lot of great books out there, but they jump into tactics too fast. And I was like, what is the one book that will be timeless for her and that I can download all my knowledge? And then I realized I have to write the book. And so that comes out in February. I'm super excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's writing the book is the easy part. Editing the book is the hard part. But anyways, so I'm super excited about that. But what was the book that got me to that point of being able to write that book? I keep coming back to The One Thing by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. That book I read it every single year. And every single year I come away with a new tip, trick, hack, concept that I need to master in my life. It's the book that keeps on giving to me.
It's a great book. It's a great read. Yep. What are your main source of information to learn and grow?
Well, I podcasts have become my new, I wouldn't say my new university. I mean, I can't sit in front of a computer and read. Like, I just don't like doing that. So if I can download on my podcast, fantastic. If you're asking for specific channels, I think, right now I'm really liking the finding good quality news on economics. And so ITR Economics has been a good resource for me because we're getting away from investing on headlines. I mean, if you read all the headlines, like, it's tragic out there. Now we have a lot of bumps in the roads, right? Like, things are not rose colored. I get that. It doesn't, those headlines are meant to draw you in, and they're clickbait, right? Like, how can we actually get the real lowdown on what's happening in the economy? Where do we go from here?
All right. And how can Decoding Cashflow listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. There, I've got a short little form for you, but you also fill out the form. We get to know each other a little bit better, and then we can hop on a call and just talk all things passive real estate. If you're looking to kickstart your own active portfolio, you can reach out to me at ashwealth.com, ashwealth.com.
Sounds great. All right, Whitney, it was a pleasure talking to you. It's a great, great insights and inputs that you have provided on the show. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Ted.
All right. Thank you much.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cashflow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cashflow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.